recording just in case folks want to watch this later. This is our UX meeting for Monday, February 13th, 2017. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so we have something more interesting to look at on the recording. Always tricky in Big Blue Button. Okay, you should be seeing my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you haven't signed in, please do. The notes should be open for anybody with the link to edit, so you can go ahead and sign in. And today we were going to talk a little more about the UX style guide for Sakai. This was something that we touched on in some of our prior meetings, and we spent some time on it at Sakai Camp to kind of think through the process of what needs to be done. Duke was kind enough to, kind of volunteer to jumpstart this process and to put some resources toward making it happen. So I will let Jolie kind of take it from there and give us a recap and see where we want to go with this.
Sure. Yeah, I had a conversation with right after we touched base about the recording and what the next steps were and some conversations that had happened at camp and after. I talked to Jeff and Kyle at NYU, and I know they're on the call. There's been discussion about applying NYU Skin to Sakai 12. So doing some more UI work with Sakai. And so the conclusion that we came to out of that conversation is that Sakai's UI is going to be changing soon, so that's maybe not the best time to start a big inventory project. So I think the goal now is to wait until 12 is out, then start an inventory project so we can use that to move forward with creating a style guide. So I know that's sort of probably not what you were expecting. We were going to talk about the work that needs to be done. I think it just makes a lot of sense to wait on that a few months. My goal right now is to touch base again with Barbara to kind of let her know how things are going with Sakai 12. If we're on track, I know the latest is that release is being time boxed. So which means that we're just, whatever doesn't get in, we'll get in later. And hopefully the UI work's going to get in. The timing is really good for her. She just lost a UX IA person, and she's just hired someone who's probably going to start in about a month. So she was a little relieved because that could be good timing for her team. But that's kind of where we're at right now with the project, is that we've got some good information. I think people are kind of up to speed on what the strategy is in terms of how the atomic design thing works and how we might proceed with coming up with doing the inventory based on the spreadsheets that we put together. And we have some time to kind of think about that and talk about that a little bit more if we're going to wait until 12 is out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, obviously, if it's going to be changing quite a bit, we don't want to start inventorying things and then have to re-inventory everything. So, but there is some planning that we could probably do in preparation and kind of setting up a lot of those spreadsheets and then kind of mapping out the process.
Yes.
So that when we are ready to start, we can kind of hit the ground running.
Yes. Yes, that is all true. Yeah, so I know other people were interested in this project and interested in a style guide, or there's maybe other aspects of this project that I think other people are interested in that maybe they haven't had a chance to talk about with this group yet. So I don't know if folks want to bring any of that up now, or if we want to just sort of move forward and you know.
But I'd be certainly interested to hear from some of the folks on the call, especially those of you who weren't able to go to Sakai Camp, if you've had a chance to kind of look at the recording, or if you've had some conversations about the UX style guide that you might want to share with this group. Feel free to chime in. Okay, I do see something in the chat. Lou Weber says, what's the future of adopting the Bootstrap framework? Will it be applied more fully to the tools that aren't in trunk? That's a good question. Does anybody have an answer? The tools that aren't in trunk primarily are contrib tools. So because they're developed independently, that would be a little harder to apply a consistent framework. Although if we kind of let people know that this is the format that we want everything in, then hopefully they'll make those adjustments as they develop those tools. That would be my best guess.
Another thing that came up at camp, and maybe some of the more technical folks, I think I saw Sam on the call earlier, but I don't know if Sean is here, or other people, or even Jeff could explain this. When we were at camp, we talked about how there was tool level styling. So some of the tools have their own styling. So they're not getting everything from Morpheus. And then also Jeff mentioned when we talked about the work that's going to be done in 12, that a lot of the different frameworks that are used in developing Sakai have their own code that's sort of applied to each framework. So that also brings in some variation. Also something that I don't totally understand, but explains why we have more discrepancies than maybe we'd like to have. I don't know if anyone else can speak to that to sort of educate the group on how that works.
Yeah, well, this is Jeff. I don't fully understand it myself, but I know there are different templating frameworks for different tools. So there's Velocity. I think there's some RSF left out there. I think JSF and others. And I was just mentioning something that our developers said, that the way those different frameworks generate the markup, there are some differences there. And that created a little bit of some challenges in terms of sort of making sure that everything is controlled by Morpheus. But I'm sure Sam and Sean could speak to it more intelligently. But I think that was in the context of in contributing the skin back. I mean, one of the things, like right now, the way we've done for the NYU skin, there are places where we're overriding some overrides in the skin, and so the hope is to clean a lot of that up, and that will make Morpheus more useful. So that's one of our goals.
Yeah, and I just see that Sean added in the chat that there's Morpheus style sheets, and then also Core Tools have their own style sheets. And we had discussed at camp was removing the top level style sheets from the tools so that all of them are only using the Morpheus skin, and then see what breaks. And then we can go back in and kind of fix those items instead of having each tool kind of overriding things to look a certain way. We're kind of all working from a common style sheet.
Yeah, and I think that's something we would try to do. I guess I'd have to talk to the developers to see if that's, if we'd be able to do the majority of that, or how that would work best. I know at camp we talked about let's just take it out and see where it breaks. So I'll talk with them and see where that kind of fits in the process.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, guess nobody has any other questions.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi, this is Randy Harrison. I'm with Lou and Laura Geckler over at Notre Dame. I just had a question. And this is maybe like a furtherance of Lou's question about Bootstrap. So we've been working on our skin here, and I watched the previous from last week, talking about the Bootstrap skin and mapping all of the different examples of, various elements. This is, here's a radio button, 15 different radio buttons, and they're all styled differently, etc. My question is, so the way that Bootstrap is structured as a library, obviously, is that things are classed out, and that HTML elements are and different containers, divs and spans and things like that are structured with classes. And if you wanted to style like an input field, like a text area or something like that, you would surround that usually with like a container class or whatever that has that corresponds to the Bootstrap class for the library. So it seems like if they wanted to, if they're saying that this is bootstrapped, right? It works on mobile because it relies on this Bootstrap framework. They would have to go back in, and this is a problem that we were having with some of our tools. They would have to go back in and actually change some of the templating, the background templating, to surround certain elements with standard Bootstrap containers and things like that. So I know we're talking about skins, and we did a lot of skinning and did exactly that. We overrides and things like that. But the problem is, as it seems to me, is that it's larger than just creating a skin to fix things on the fly with the CSS, but to actually have to go in to standardize a lot of these elements. If you're going to use Bootstrap 3 or 4 or whatever as a framework, to go in and actually change the templating behind the code to add in these different elements to target the DOM elements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And that's, as we look at this, and scope out this work, it's a question of how much does the markup need to change?
It's a big thing. I'm saying, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah. Yeah. And
big. It's a big project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of it goes beyond just the skin elements, and some of it comes down to terminology, what things are called, how are things labeled? Is it save or post, or
Right.
what's the terminology used for buttons, and where would they appear, and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, we don't want to make perfect the enemy of good. So I think we just have to, in terms of what we contribute back, it's not going to be shiny, clean, perfect under the covers in every case, right? You just have to kind of find the balance of, improving it for developers who are going to reskin in the future, but you also don't want it to be a year-long project.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about whether that was part of that was in scope for the project, like because the mapping thing of looking at all the different elements, and that first step of mapping seems absolutely crucial. But then for me, obviously the question was like, well, once we map these, though, it's not just a question of styling them, right? We need to we'd probably need to go through, and then that's where the scope just gets it really enormous. So
Yeah, well, I think, as Jeff said, I mean, we're not going to fix this all at once, but we can kind of chip away at it. And then as new things are refreshed or new tools are built, or, if we have kind of some standards in place and start applying those for any new work, and then at the same time kind of go back through continually and find places where things can be improved. I think it's a kind of a continual process.
Sure. Okay, thanks. I appreciate the answer.
All right, so we have another question. How might you of Notre Dame, Randy and Lou, apparently, best help with chipping away at this? And that's a great question, because that's what ideally we'd like to generate out of this working group, is to help Duke and help the community as a whole kind of find the best way to tackle this. We know it's a huge project, so it's going to take a lot of people working on it to make any headway. So how can we coordinate our efforts so that we're not overlapping, and so we're kind of working in the same way so that it's easy for somebody to look across tools. Any thoughts?
This is Jolie. There's some immediate work that needs to be done now that NYU, and I don't know who else might be, working on that. Because there's two different things here. There's the UI work that's happening now, and then the style guide is a different thing. The style guide is to make sure that new work is, compliant with a guide, right? There's something articulated that developers can follow when they're creating new tools or redesigning something. We're not going to work on that until the summer and the inventory is done. And the inventory is going to be a community effort. But in terms of the UI work that's going to be happening between now and the release of 12, that's up to others to speak to. And we can always come back to you guys in the summer in June once 12 is out, and we can revisit how you might participate in that project at the time.
And Sean mentioned in the chat, personally, I think the inventory and the style guide, we need the inventory and the style guide before we can start changing tools too much, or else we'll just have to redo changes. It's kind of which came first, chicken or the egg, in a little bit. We're hoping that maybe some of the UX style guide can come out of the inventory as we see, where things are already somewhat standardized.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does help to kind of have something in mind ahead of time before you start changing things. So, yeah.
Is the chipping away, okay, so this is Randy, is the chipping away that happens, loose term, right? Is it like we take the inventory, we create the style guide, and the style guide, for example, has, okay, buttons always have their bootstrap classes, but then here are some additional styles, and it changes it this way. Or is it, is it relying on a base of Bootstrap 3? Tabs always look this way, they always have this much padding, etc. Or are we kind of taking the style guide that we create, are we going to move farther afield from the baseline of, because Bootstrap looks like Bootstrap, it always does, and that's that's I think a plus and a minus. Obviously, that's some people's critique of it, is that any Bootstrap site looks like a Bootstrap site. But the plus is that the affordances are always the same. You know what a button is, you know what a tab is, and they're all relatively seamlessly styled together. But obviously that might be a problem for some people, especially if people want to brand their, pull in their brand identity, etc. So can you say a little bit more about how how strict we want to adhere to a bootstrap out of the box when we create that kind of style guide, or are we going to take it and improve on it and then create this unified but still baseline style? Or, you know, what are the plans in terms of building the style? If my questions make any sense, sorry.
Anybody want to take that one? Because I'm not sure I know the answer.
I don't think this has even been discussed, really. I mean, not on any calls that I've been on. I feel like if others have discussed this already, I don't know about it. So I think maybe just this is like discussions that haven't happened yet that I assumed would happen after an inventory. But
and Sean is adding that he personally would prefer not to rely too much on Bootstrap, because it does make everything look the same, which can be good or bad. Instead, he'd prefer to refer to it as Morpheus, and that gives us a little bit more freedom. And yeah, he agrees with Jolie that it's a little bit too early to decide this. I think the piece that we can kind of wrap our heads around at this point in time is that, you know, that this inventory needs to be done, and we know that's a to-do. And it's a big job to inventory all of the tools in Sakai. Sakai is very large. So one way that I can think of to kind of approach it, and it's a way that we discussed at Sakai Camp, is to model it a little bit like some of the QA that's been done for the releases, and to have kind of a list of tools, and then maybe if an institution wants to adopt a tool, for example, and kind of focus a lot of their inventory on a particular tool or a particular set of tools to take on that piece of the inventory. That would be really helpful in helping us develop this comprehensive look across the application. And then I think once we've done some of that, some of these more technical issues, and the actual class styling and things that go into the style sheet itself, those I think can be decided later, and I'm not the person that would be able to elaborate on that. I don't know if some of our other more technical folks on the call want to jump in. And if you want to look at the link that Jolie just posted, that goes to the UI inventory sheets. And again, it was kind of modeled after the QA process, but basically it's got kind of the tool listed, and then how high priority that is. If there's an owner that's kind of taking that tool as theirs, to make sure that it's thoroughly checked, and then what the status is, the percent complete, all that kind of stuff. And then these link out to individual documents. Let me open one of these up. I don't know if they have any. Yeah, okay. So this would have actual screen images pasted in. Here's some examples of different areas. But then you would kind of go through the tool and create a visual inventory of everything. So we know what some of the major elements are, and then they can be more easily compared across tools to make sure that they're all consistent, or at least to develop a skeletal framework for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make a little more sense in terms of how Notre Dame could be of assistance? Great. So Jolie, we're thinking that this wouldn't start until until 12 is out the door, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we could potentially start sooner if we get to a point where we know things are frozen, not going to change, and a tool is done, no more work's going to be done on this specific area. We could potentially begin earlier, but
Okay, so possibly during the QA process.
yeah.
Because people would be in there QAing anyway, so
Right,
if
and
someone
that's something
was
that
doing,
came up at camp, right? That we might be able to just do both.
right,
We'll have to see
right.
how that goes, because that might be a
It
little
might be a lot, so
Yeah.
it would really slow people down. But if someone happened to volunteer to do both, then it could maybe get some economy of scale there.
Yeah.
And Laura is asking when 12 is due out. The last that I heard was we were looking at a summer release. I'm assuming that would be maybe late summer. Sean is saying we discussed branching 12 in March, aiming for May. So I don't know if anybody has any more recent information on that.
That's about it. I think we are waiting for our rubrics to get finished and the bullhorns to get in and whatever else from Noodle was getting in. But I think a lot of that was time's going back pretty quick. So
if we're looking at an end of May release, then potentially we could start the inventory sometime at the beginning of May while QA and things are happening, but if people wanted to get going. So it's February. we have about 3 months to kind of gear up for this. Sounds like a lot of time, really not.
It'll go by.
So I don't know if anybody knows right off the bat that they want to volunteer to adopt a tool. We could certainly use people to volunteer to help out with some of the inventory, even though you're not going to be doing anything right away.
a lot of these aren't. I think dashboard isn't going to be included, and it probably will be removed. So I would probably just remove that or set it to the lowest priority.
Yeah.
Priorities.
Because because these were modeled after the QA sheets, we haven't, we know that we can probably discard some of them.
Yeah, but if people were picking them up, then it's like, oh, I'll pick up dashboard. Yay.
That's a real easy one.
Yeah, but that one and like MathJax, that really isn't anything you can review for UI. And
that's what I was telling Barbara. She ended up doing some work on the sheets after I left for camp. So
a couple of those. Gradebook Classic will probably drop or have really the lowest priority on it, since it's really only used for if there's a bug in Gradebook NG right now, and it seems infrequent.
Yeah, we're relying on Classic quite a bit, but I don't know that we should focus any UI enhancements there per se. So yeah, I think it could probably be reduced in priority as it's going to be phased out. So yeah, this gives us a chance to kind of go back through this sheet and sort of remove things and even potentially do a little refining of the sheet, and even the process. We could do a tool and see how it goes and figure out where some pain points might be with them, or where some improvements can be made. So we could do that to have them sort of in better shape in early May.
Yeah, I think one thing we might want to do is, again, similar to what we did a little bit with the Sakai 11 QA effort, is to maybe have some webinars at the beginning to kind of let people know about the process and how to contribute, and kind of walk through maybe some examples so people can see how the inventory is done, so they know kind of what to do once they have picked up a tool and are ready to start creating some of those inventory sheets. So it might be good to maybe earmark some dates and think about when we want to schedule those, like how far in advance.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And Barbara wasn't here today because she knew we were going to be delaying, and she would have had to move something on her schedule. But one of the things I'll work on with her is making sure that she knows when these meetings are, and we can make sure that we can attend and be here consistently while this is going on.
Yeah, that would be great. And if we need to shift the time or the day, let me know. And I could send out another doodle poll to see if there's a better time during the week that works for more people. Let's see. Just want to capture some of this stuff from the chat since the chat doesn't show up in the recording. Okay, so let's see. Sakai is asking, or I'm sorry, Laura is asking, Sakai 10's home is Sakai 11's overview and forward. Sean says people were worried it would slow down the review process. Oh, this is talking about doing a review for each PR. But I think it might be necessary to maintain the integrity of the style guide. Yeah, I think once we have a firm guide, then there will need to be a little bit of extra review when things are submitted for a PR to make sure that it kind of adheres to the style guide, so we're not having to go back and do double duty later to fix it. And Laura's thinking, yes, I don't think we have to wait for the guide. Okay, there's this whole chat conversation, which I'm not going to read off to you because that's like, I'll wait till they finish what they're talking about, and then I'll just try to summarize.
Okay, I'll try and summarize here. Hi, everybody. Okay. Let's see. In the initial process, since there isn't a style guide, the PR review for UX, or as Sean says, internationalization and accessibility should also be in there. But the review would be sort of just that's in keeping with what we're doing in tools X, Y, and Z, but tool Y has, or tool B has this instead. And in this PR, you are suggesting a third version. Perhaps you should, go back. Perhaps we should stick to the whatever style or consistency it has the greater impetus forward movement at this time. And then what happens is you get more and more consistent and fewer outliers, even though you may not have chosen the correct style during that round of the PRs because you don't have your style guide. Once you get the style guide, you go, oh no, we didn't want to use those, we wanted to use these. But perhaps it's easier to change those into these because those are a more limited set than they would have been if we had not started doing PR reviews that way sooner. And it also gets us as a community, hopefully we don't frustrate people with this, but it gets us as a community accustomed to having PRs reviewed both for how they function and what they look like. There, I think I pulled that together. What do you think, guys?
Thank you. That was a much better summary than I could have given. Sean wants to know if we have a rubric to evaluate PRs at this time without a style guide. No, but we could build one, Laura says. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're hoping to do with the style guide. I don't know if we could come up with a more limited one in the meantime while we're waiting for the larger project to kind of continue. But yeah, I don't know which comes first. So.
Well, this is Jeff. There are a few basic things. So Sean was asking earlier about, did we make changes to tools? We didn't make huge changes, massive changes to tools. But for example, And we talked about this a bit at Sakai Camp. So if you look at the new gradebook settings, how it has the kind of expandy stuff in settings, that looks a bit like what you see in the settings of Samigo. So it's this kind of expandable sections. So we extended that to syllabus because that also has expandable sections. And so that looks a lot nicer. I know there are a lot of syllabus fans out there. Sorry. Yeah, so that looks nicer. And there are other places, like say when you go to site info and you see your groups and there are expandy things there. So little bits like that, and we can put those together. I mean, as we contribute the skin back, we could put together something that just says, oh, and by the way, just as a, to work in an agile way, here are a few sort of things that we did applied across the tools that are pretty non-controversial like that, right? It's like either it looks like a very old expandy thing or it looks like something more modern, the work that was done, the relatively recent work that was done in the tests and quizzes settings, and then also in gradebook NG settings. So bits like that, I mean, we could, as part of giving the skin back, we can just give a little bit, a few of those elements that we've changed in tools. Expandy thingies, thank you. So yeah, that could give a little something. So if somebody's making a change, and it relates to expandy thingies, and there are probably others that I'm not thinking about right now. Like, well, let's say for example, you have the new icons in the left-hand menu. Those have been applied in different places, right? So like they've been applied in the lessons tool, they've been applied in the gradebook tool, right? When you're referencing like an external item. So if somebody makes a change and it's not using those same icons, or it's using the old ones, that can be another sort of quick rubric for evaluation. So I think we agreed at camp, let's move in a let's not move in kind of a using like a waterfall method where we get the perfect style guide first, and then a year and a half later we start using it. Let's get some very basic standards that we can use in the short term. So I hope that would be helpful.
So as a group, do we want to take any action items right now out of this meeting? I'm gonna switch over to the notes here.
Well, I mean, I guess NYU will continue to sort of scope out the work on the skin, work toward getting that back, and then as part of that, we'll just note some of the changes that we have made, like the expandy changes in tools. I did just want to mention too, so I invited Charlie Pike to this call. So he's worked with NYU for some time now, for many, many years. And he's part of a company, TPG, the Paciello Group, and they're an accessibility and usability company firm. And so they were very involved in our work on the gradebook. And as I mentioned at Sakai Camp, accessibility at NYU is a pretty hot topic. So what we'd like to contribute in that regard is if Matt Clare will kind of provide some some of the big sort of JIRAs around accessibility, Charlie and his folks would take a look at those and give some recommendations on sort of technical solutions around that. So that ties more into accessibility, but obviously accessibility and usability are closely related. So I thought it would be good for Charlie to join the call. And Charlie, did you want to say anything else about TPG or the work that you do?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Good. Yeah, so we're the Paciello Group is a accessibility consultancy primarily. We also do user experience and user research, etc. And I'm actually based in Dublin, Ireland, but our main office is in Nashua, New Hampshire. And as Jeff has been saying, we've been working for a number of years with NYU, particularly of late on accessibility. And I think we were thinking if we could provide some sort of direct assistance with, as you're working on components and so on, to look at what you're doing, provide directed but both technical advice on how to implement in an accessible way, or even more general advice in terms of how to go about the accessibility work as a whole. But just to be kind of on your shoulder on regular calls to be able to provide that assistance where it's needed.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely something that we need to kind of bake in, is the thoughts about accessibility and making sure that all these components meet those requirements as they're being contributed. Yeah,
and Lou, thanks for pasting that in, and Sean pointed out. So there is I don't remember if I mentioned this, if Kyle and I mentioned this, Charlie, but there is also this accessibility working group call this Wednesday at 1. I was going to reach out to Matt and just sort of get some of those JIRAs, and then we could get like Hans or someone to advise on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is something that came up at Sakai Camp, along with usability, just, what statements can we make about Sakai in terms of, meeting WCAG 2.0 and those types of things. So yeah, that'll be exciting.
Okay, yeah, that'd be very, very interesting. So I can see if one of the team could attend. You don't want me; I'm not the technical guy, but I can see if as you say, Jeff, Hans, or someone in the States can join that call and see how we can help. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yep. I'll give them a heads up.
Super.
Okay, I pasted in another action item is to update those inventory sheets, because as we just noticed, there were a couple items that might need to either be removed or the priority changed on them. So,
I'll take that. I'll take that one. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see. We should probably schedule some call or webinars or other announcements about how to help with the inventory. So once we get those sheets updated, then we should probably think about having some sort of an orientation type webinar that can be recorded. We can make it available to people later, so that if they want to help with the inventory effort once it gets going, they'll kind of have some grounding there. So I can help schedule that once we're a little bit further along. And I'll probably, Jolie, I'm going to volunteer you for this?
Yes, yes,
All right.
definitely.
All right, so because I need to kind of wait until you're done with the inventory sheets before we get people kind of agreeing to adopt a tool. But yeah, so we'll try to get some of those on the calendar. Can anybody think of any other action items that we need right now? It's still kind of early, I know. Nope. Okay. So, well, thanks again for everybody that attended today to talk about this. I think it's a really important issue that we need to address as a community. I think it can go a long way towards making the user experience much more pleasant for Sakai users to have that consistency and that modern UI. So this is a big step towards getting that accomplished. So thank you all for your willingness to volunteer toward that end. I did have one other item that I pasted in here from Slack a few days ago. I don't know if this is something that that we want to look at. Jonas had posted this to our UX Slack channel. I'll just pull it up real quick so we can look at the conversation again. If it will load. Like it's not loading. That's interesting. There we go. Okay. I think this has to do with the icons. Yeah. This was here, let me make this a little bit smaller. Getting cut off. All right, so yeah, I think it had to do with the Font Awesome icons instead of Silk. Is that already in the works? Anybody know? There's
Wilma,
a PR. Yeah.
this is Sam. Yeah, if you're logged in, it should tell you if there's a PR or not. If you're not logged in, it won't tell
Yeah,
you.
I'm not logged in right now.
So yeah, there's a PR.
Okay. So we don't need to worry about this one then. All right, cool.
Yeah, unless people have thoughts on it, but
Yeah. I thought I heard somebody else. Was somebody going to say something? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that is all I had on the agenda for today. Unless there's anything else that you guys want to talk about, we can end a few minutes early. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 6th. If there's a change in the meeting time, I'll be sure to let you guys know, or if there's a different day that's better, day or time, and you guys want to shift the meeting, let me know. I'm happy to do another doodle poll to see what's best for folks. Unless I hear people wanting to change, we'll just continue with the first Monday. So if you have any thoughts on agenda items for next time, please send them to me. Once again, thanks for attending. I'll talk to you guys next month.
Thanks, Wilma.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.